Halloween, the night he came home. And what a night of terror it was. John Carpenter's 1978 masterpiece sees the silent escaped patient Michael Myers, otherwise known as The Shape, head down to his hometown of Haddonfield, where he arms himself with a knife and white-faced mask to unleash his unstoppable evil, where teenage babysitter Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, comes face to face with Michael's sheer terror and evil, as she must try to survive the evil that is now stalking her. All while Dr. Loomis, played by Donald Pleasance, is desperately trying to track down the deranged killer, so he can finally put a stop to the evil once and for all. So what better Halloween movie to look into than, well, Halloween, the classic and the original one. So let's check out 10 things that you probably didn't know about this movie. Number 10. The Babysitter Murders. Halloween was the brainchild of movie producer Irwin Yablans, who wanted to make a movie about babysitters being stalked by a crazed killer, with his intention to make a movie that'll have the same impact as The Exorcist. He approached uprising filmmaker John Carpenter about the project after watching his action thriller Assault on Precinct 13. Carpenter agreed to make the movie on the grounds that he could have complete creative control, which would see him act as the movie's director, writer, as well as scoring the picture, to which, for his efforts, Carpenter was paid $10,000. Carpenter's then girlfriend Deborah Hill would act as the movie's producer and co-writer, with Halloween being a collaboration between the young couple, and so the movie that was called The Babysitter Murders went into production. Although Yablans then decided to base the events in the movie on the night of Halloween, so the title was changed from The Babysitter Murders to Halloween. It's also claimed that Carpenter took inspiration from the 1974 slasher movie Black Christmas, with Halloween almost being something of a spiritual sequel. But that movie's director has also maintained that Halloween was inspired by Black Christmas, and that Halloween is solely Carpenter's creation. Number 9. You Can't Kill Evil. According to co-writer and producer Deborah Hill, the script for Halloween took 3 weeks to write, and she and Carpenter took heavy inspirations from the Celtic Halloween tradition of Samhain, which marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter. The mythology of Samhain claims that on that night, evil souls are unleashed and wreak havoc on the living, and that the evil that is unleashed can't be killed as it's pure evil manifested. Carpenter and Hill took this concept and applied it to The Shape, aka Michael Myers, in that he isn't human but evil personified, who is unleashed on Halloween where he preys and stalks his victims, of which there is no escape, giving Michael Myers supernatural undertones. In fact, Halloween's novelization goes one step further, and actually starts off the story with the origins of Samhain in Ireland, and suggests that Myers himself is an extension of the horror that was unleashed with Samhain. I wonder what the actual movie would have been like had it explored these ancient Celtic supernatural themes. But regardless, Halloween does have a lot to do with the season itself, other than just setting the events on Halloween. Number 8. Other inspirations. Halloween starts off with a disturbing scene of Michael Myers as a child killing his sister, where from there Myers becomes a mental patient who Dr. Loomis describes as pure evil. It's described that Myers has a blank, emotionless face and, quote, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. Carpenter himself took inspiration from a real-life mental patient that he had encountered. As for the name Michael Myers, well, that was the name of a producer that Carpenter had met, and Laurie Strode is the name of one of his ex-girlfriends. And 2 characters in the movie are also named after characters from Alfred Hitchcock movies, including Dr. Loomis, who was named after Sam Loomis from Psycho, and Tommy Doyle, who was named after Detective Thomas Doyle from Rear Window. As for writing the script itself, Hill wrote all the babysitter scenes as she had experience from being a babysitter in her teenage years, whereas Carpenter focused on the Loomis elements. So with the script in place, the challenge was now to find the right cast to play these characters. Number 7. The night the cast came home. When it came to casting the Van Helsing to Michael Myers' Dracula, Dr. Loomis, Carpenter's original choice for the part was Hammer horror star Peter Cushing. But at that time, Cushing had just starred in Star Wars, and having been in one of the biggest movies of that time meant that Halloween's budget couldn't afford the actor. Fellow Hammer horror actor Christopher Lee was next in line to play the part, but he too turned it down. But Lee would go on to say that turning the part down was the biggest mistake of his career. Veteran British actor Donald Pleasance was approached, who at that time was probably best known for playing the Bond villain Blofeld in You Only Live Twice. Oddly, he accepted the role because his daughter was a fan of John Carpenter's score that he composed for Assault on Precinct 13. Annie Lockhart was Carpenter's original choice for Laurie Strode, but she was unavailable due to other working commitments. When Jamie Lee Curtis came along, Carpenter didn't know who she was and saw her as some 19-year-old from TV. But when Hill and Carpenter learned that her mother was Janet Leigh, who played Marion Crane from Psycho, they felt that having that Psycho connection would be great publicity for Halloween, so she was cast. And they really struck gold with Curtis, as she proved perfect for the role. However, Curtis felt that she related more to Laurie's friends, not identifying herself as a shy, quiet type, but more of a cheerleader. Well, she still managed to pull it off thanks to her sincerity and wisdom. Number 6. The shapes of Michael Myers. So with the important parts of Dr. Loomis and Laurie Strode being cast, next Carpenter and Hill had to find the right actor to play Michael Myers, or in this case, actors. For the most part, Michael Myers was played by Nick Castle, who at that time was a friend of Carpenter's as they met in college. Castle would go on to co-write Escape from New York, as well as direct The Last Starfighter. When we see child Michael Myers' hands at the start of the movie, those hands were actually Deborah Hill's hands. Then when we see the child Michael Myers unmasked, it was played by a child actor called Will Sandin. When we see adult Michael Myers briefly unmasked, he was played by actor Tony Moran. And for the famous closet scene, Myers was played by Tommy Lee Wallace, who was the production designer and editor of Halloween, and Wallace would go on to direct Halloween 3 Season of the Witch and the It miniseries. So there wasn't just one person playing Michael Myers, but rather he was brought to life thanks to a collection of efforts. By the way, what's with all the Dr. Pepper cans and the behind the scenes photos? Did the production have some kind of deal with Dr. Pepper, or did everyone working on the film just generally love the drink? I don't know. Number 5. The Face of Terror. Okay, this isn't something that Halloween fans wouldn't know about, but I kind of feel that it's obligatory to mention it. That of course being the origins of Myers' pale white mask, which goes with the cold, expressionless explanation of the character. The producers needed a haunting mask, but at the same time, the production was also on a tight budget. At one stage, it was even suggested that Myers was to wear a clown mask. But it was the as mentioned Tommy Lee Wallace who gave us the iconic Michael Myers mask as we know it, when he went to a costume shop in Hollywood and brought a Captain Kirk mask for $1.98. Yep, a mask of William Shatner's face. Wallace knew that he would need to make the mask scarier, where he widened the eye holes and trimmed and dyed the mask's wig and painted the face white. And just like that, one of the most terrifying movie masks of all time was created, and it's just as iconic now as it was back in 1978. And it's all thanks to Captain Kirk. Shatner himself said that he couldn't believe it when he found out that the Halloween mask was made out of his own face, and further said that the face molds that were used to create those masks were actually created on the set of Star Trek, so he wouldn't have to be available for the prosthetics that were made for his face. So it wasn't really just a mask of William Shatner, but it was based on an actual mold of his face. So Michael Myers is literally walking around with William Shatner's face, which oddly makes it even more creepier. Number 4. Filming. Despite being set in Illinois, namely the fictional town of Haddonfield, Halloween was filmed around California, mainly South Pasadena. The shoot only lasted 4 weeks, consisting of 20 working days, and it utilised Steadicam technology, which was a new kind of filming back then. As filming was taking place in May, it was actually an effort for the production to find pumpkins, as well as dressing the locations to look like it was celebrating Halloween. And in addition to that, artificial leaves were also spread out to make it look more like October. The Michael Myers house itself was an old abandoned Victorian house known as the Century House. and it was owned by a church at the time. The house was set to be demolished in 1987 in order to build a hospital, but thankfully the house's historical significance was realised, so the house was simply relocated. These days the house is no longer a place of residence, but offices for businesses. And I read somewhere several years ago that at one stage it was a dentist surgery. Yeah, look, I don't know how I feel about getting my teeth fixed at the home of Michael Myers. Number 3. Subliminal visuals on the poster. So now we get to the iconic Halloween movie poster, definitely one of the most recognisable posters of the 1970s and the horror genre, which features a hand holding a knife which creates a sinister looking jack-o'-lantern. It's truly a striking and mesmerising visual, and lets you know that you're in for one terrifying experience. The poster was designed by artist Bob Gleason, and he claims that when he designed the poster, he was going for a strobe light stabbing effect. And if you look closely at the hand holding the knife, you can see a screaming face in the knuckles, which in my opinion kind of looks like the Michael Myers mask. Once you see this face, it's there, you can't unsee it. However, despite having a subliminal visual snuck into the poster, it apparently was a happy accident, as Gleason claims that he didn't intend to put the screaming face in the poster. He would go on to say, quote, "This kind of freaks me out. I couldn't have done it better if I had tried to do that. What dark nightmares lurk in my psyche?" Several parts of the world had different posters that uses different artwork specifically for each country it was being marketed in. Here in Australia we got this poster that featured a photo of Michael Myers on the staircase, which has gone on to be described as the Hitchcock poster. Number 2. The TV version. Halloween made its TV premiere in October 1981 when it was broadcast on NBC. However, there was one tiny problem. Additional scenes had to be filmed for Halloween, as NBC gave Halloween a 2-hour slot, which would have been beneficial for the channel as it meant it could squeeze in more commercials. But Halloween only clocked in at just over an hour and a half, so new scenes were filmed to fill out the time. Some of the made-for-TV scenes do feel like filler, you know, just extra padding, like scenes with Laurie and her friends. But some are actually really interesting, like a young Dr. Loomis telling a board that Myers should be locked up in a maximum security prison, and a really haunting scene where Loomis comes face to face with the child Michael Myers. The way it's shot has great build-up and tension. It's like two foes coming face to face for the first time. You see, here's the thing though. These new additional scenes were filmed in 1981, the same year that Halloween 2 was filmed. And that movie had the shock revelation that Michael Myers is Laurie Strode's brother. And I think that was in mind when filming these new scenes, as after Myers escapes at the start of the movie, Loomis inspects his room, where there's a hint that Myers is coming after his sister, aka Laurie, where Loomis knows exactly where Myers is going to. Yes, I know it could be a reference to his older sister that he previously killed, but the way that scene is filmed almost suggests like Myers has unfinished business with another sister. Or at least that's what I take away from it. Bonus entry: Atari game. In 1983, Michael Myers crossed over into the world of video games with the release of Halloween for the Atari 2600. The game was quite revolutionary for its time, as there weren't that many games based on R-rated horror movies. In the game, gamers get to play as a babysitter who have to save children from a knife-holding killer. The names Laurie Strode and Michael Myers are never used, probably due to copyright reasons. The game was created by a company called Wizard Video Games, who also made an Atari game for Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the same time. The game was also very controversial for its time due to its violence and subject matter, which is insane considering how violent and graphic video games have now become, with violence now being the accepted norm within video games. Nope, back in 1983, these crude pixelated killings were terrifying everyone. Due to its controversial reputation, many video game retailers sold Halloween under the counter. However, both Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre put Wizard Video Games into bankruptcy, and to save costs, some cartridges didn't even have proper labels printed on it, but just a piece of tape with Halloween handwritten on the tape by a marker. Due to the game's controversy and rarity, it's become something of a sought-after novelty among game collectors. So if you want to play one of the first violent video games, here it is. Number 1. The Night He Came Home to the Box Office. Halloween had its premiere in Kansas City on October the 25th, 1978, where it would go on to get a statewide release. Halloween would become one of the most successful independent movies of all time, as it would go on to make somewhere between $60 to $70 million at the box office on its budget of $300,000, making it extremely profitable. Despite minimal advertising, its success sprung mainly from word of mouth. Halloween got mainly positive reviews from critics, and it would go on to rejuvenate the slasher genre, taking the slasher films from the days of old with movies like Psycho and Peeping Tom to the new era of Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Halloween has deservedly gone on to be considered one of the greatest horror movies of all time, and one of the most influential. Halloween doesn't need to rely on shocking visuals and gore. The horror lies in its pure terror and tension that it creates. A lot of the movie is shown through Michael Myers' point of view, which puts us the viewer in the uncomfortable role of Michael Myers, with the audience following this maniac's stalking antics and murders. It creates an uneasy tension within the audience itself. It's a terrifying tale about a being who is the embodiment of sheer evil, whom is unstoppable and seemingly has no rhyme and reason to his chaos. Its tension is superb, its filmmaking is top tier, and it's for all of these reasons that in October 1978, a cinematic legend was born. It's for good reason that many people say that Halloween is one of the greatest movies of all time, as well as one of the greatest slasher movies of all time. Halloween has become more than a movie, but an institution and a tradition in its own right. So with that, I'm Minty, and to quote Michael Myers himself, see ya!